Welcome to another exciting episode of In Conversation with Alethia. I'm your host, Alethia O'Hara-Stephenson. In each episode, I sit down with incredibly inspiring individuals who are doing amazing things. The show will educate, it will empower, and it will inspire you. So be sure to tune in each and every week. In this episode, I am tremendously honored to have an amazing guest. She's a trailblazer, a pioneer. She's an author, a speaker, and so much more. She's also a former educator, Order of Ontario recipient. She is none other than the incredible Dr. Rosemary Sadlier. Welcome to In Conversation with Alethia, Rosemary.
Thank you so much for having me on such a hot day.
That's okay. We're inside, so we get to enjoy a wonderful conversation together. I'm going to really dive right into your story, Rosemary, because you have such an incredibly inspiring and rich story. And I mentioned that you're an author, but before we even get to you being an author, I want to dive into the beginning, how all of this got started. So, what I failed to mention was that you were a former president of the Ontario Black History Society. And as part of that, you were also instrumental in leading the way for us to even have a Black History Month, Emancipation Day. Can you take us back to some of those early pioneering days, to how you got started and why?
Well, it was there's so many ways to answer this question, but I had parents who were very much committed to making sure that I knew who I was, because it's very hard to establish an identity for yourself when you are the only one and one of the only family in your neighborhood. And that's what my situation was. But, moving ahead a little bit quickly, by the time I ended up being the head of the Ontario Black History Society, I had already been on the board for a couple of years. I had been doing presentations in schools and community organizations and churches and wherever anybody would listen to or wanted to hear about Black history. And I had 3 children. Mm-hmm. So I went to an AGM on time, actually, early on time. And they held a vote to put the officers in place, and I was made president. So I had no agenda. I wasn't ready. I was doing my work remotely before it was fashionable. And I was only there because I had to get home and feed my baby. He was still so I became president, and soon after, because I wasn't in the office that often, right, I found out that we were supposed to go to the city because Dr. Daniel G. Hill and the founders of the Ontario Black History Society had built on what the women of the Canadian Negro Women's Association had done. Mm-hmm. The first ones to formalize February as Black History Month with the city by 1979. But every year after that, people, they would go to the city and say, please, can we have Black History Month? I didn't know that. So we almost didn't have it for 1994. Mm-hmm. Okay, this can never happen to anyone again. I went to the city to see what I could do to secure it annually. I then decided this is important enough, it should be provincial. I went to the province, or contact with the province of Ontario, effected that for me. And then I started to try to get in touch with all federal members of parliament, especially in the GTA or those that I knew. And this is at a time when there's no social media, everything, right, phone call, in person, snail mail, and fax. So I'm sure some people watching is like, what's fax? But anyway, I wasn't hearing back from the federal people, and I happened to encounter Jean Augustine at Denham Jolly's home. There was a fundraiser going on, and I asked her in person right then and there, would she champion this in the House, because there had already been a community of interest established by my work and the work of other people with the OBHS, including the 2000 Black History Month presentations I'd already done.
Incredible.
So she thought about it for a minute, consulted with Lloyd Perry, who some of you might know was a lawyer that got Patty Day established. And she agreed that she would do it. She went to consult with him, came out and said she would. So I'm feeding her office Black history facts by facts so that she help to take that information to sell other people on why it's important. And by December of 95, it was passed. And her office contacted my office so that we would know to watch it on CPAC. I was the only person that wasn't elected that was part of the first National Black History Month celebration in Ottawa. The only non-elected person. So I was on stage addressing the nation with the Prime Minister. So all of that happened relatively quickly. 1993, about November, when I first found out about the city, all the way through to December 1995. Around the same time, I started to work on Emancipation Day. And I got it with the City of Toronto, Metro Toronto, City of Ottawa, relatively quickly. It didn't happen. I kept going to the federal government. It wasn't getting anywhere. It went to second reading in the House twice, went to second reading in the Senate twice. Provincially, it went through the first unanimous all-party bill, Bill 111, in 2008. And so I continued to push for Emancipation Day. And after I had left the Ontario Black History Society, I then did a national parliamentary petition, but that wasn't required, as it turns out. And long story, after 22 years, in March of 2021, we now have a National Emancipation Day in Canada.
Amazing.
And that's not the only thing I've done. Those are the two big ones that people know about. But then there are other commemorations, there are national conferences, there are conferences, lots of things that we tried to do. Just and outside. Yeah.
I love that story because it shapes the conversation for where I want to go next. And it's talking about Black history in Canada. And your history, if I'm not mistaken, on your mom's side, you were able to trace it back to, I believe, the early 1700s, or was it 1800s?
That side. So my mom is 1830.
Wow.
Underground Railroad coming in near London, Ontario. And people aren't, if there's no work, people move. That's a big reason why people move. And so my mother's mother, my grandmother, who I never met, came into Toronto, and she met and married someone, and that's how my mother was born in Toronto, not London, not Woodstock. And my father, his family is from New Brunswick, and I think what I find fascinating is that this is my own father, and I couldn't even appreciate the depth of that story until I was a bit older. But his family has been in Canada since 1783. And they were the Black Loyalists, the late Loyalists, and the refugees of the War of 1812. So between my two parents, I'm connected to the first waves of migration of Black people to this country. And that doesn't mean anything, except it means everything.
It does.
It doesn't make, sadly, it doesn't make my life that much different than anyone else's. But what it means is that when people suggest that there is no Black history, or when people suggest that Black people have only recently arrived in this country, and therefore, when you start the clock ticking about when our contributions began, they didn't begin in, 1967. They began long before that. And if you happen to have come after 1967, then you're adding to what was here. You're not the only story. Awesome. And that's when our community is so fascinating because there's so many different pieces of us, people who have been here generationally, people who have been here very recently, people who are here from various places in the Caribbean or South America or Britain, or much more recently-ish in large numbers from African countries. So we all have a different way of being Black in Canada.
Yes, and it's a rich history, and I'm glad you touched on it because oftentimes, and we've all talked about, education and the lack of or not enough of in our school system. And as we have young people growing up, regardless of their background, regardless of their heritage, the fact that you're in Canada, you should know about the rich tapestry, the rich history of Canadian history. So I love that you were able to dive into that. I want to dive right into Order of Ontario because you recently received that, I'm going to call it an honor. What was it like? And, that moment when you knew that you were the Order of Ontario recipient, and just a little bit of background about what it is.
Um, the Order of Ontario is the highest honor that the province of Ontario issues. And I actually got it a while ago. I got it, I think, oh gosh, I think I got it in 2004. I honestly don't remember. I've had it for a while. And I got it because by that time I had succeeded in securing a National Black History Month declaration. I had also, there were other things that I had succeeded in doing, a number of national and provincial and municipal historic plaques of people, places, and events. And just, working on some elements of curriculum where it was possible. So I had already been doing a bit, and I know who actually nominated me. I found out after the fact, but it was an MPP, Leonard Braithwaite. And Leonard Braithwaite, he was very interested in Black history. And he, when he first became a member of provincial parliament, one of the first things that he did was to end segregated schools in Ontario. He made sure the last one was closed.
Wow, that is powerful. And that's a little bit of history that many people aren't aware of. Do you recall when he was in office as an MPP?
Well, it would have to have been in the 60s for sure, because I think that's when the last segregated school closed. It happened while he was there. And, but the exact years I don't remember offhand. Yeah.
Okay. No, that is great. That's a really rich history. And I want to take a short break and come back and pick up the conversation about you being an honorary doctorate. You've got one and another one on the way. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with In Conversation with Alethia with the incredible Rosemary Sadlier. We'll be right back. Welcome back to In Conversation with Alethia. I'm going to pick up the conversation with Dr. Rosemary Sadlier. Rosemary, so we left on the break talking about your historic nomination and recognition with the Order of Ontario. And now we're going to pick it up with another amazing and incredible honor, which is an honorary doctorate from OCAD University. Can you tell us a little bit about that moment and what does it mean for you to be an honorary doctor? That's incredible.
I got an honorary doctorate from OCAD last summer, and I was absolutely shocked. I had no idea. I knew nothing about it until I got a call asking me to phone the president. And I thought it was I didn't believe it. So I don't think I did at first. And so they called me back and it's like, no, you really need to call. So I did. And that was when I found out. And I was just really floored. I mean, it was a surprise. It's an honor. It's everything all at once. And then they ask you if you'll accept it.
Of course.
See, let me think about that. Yeah, it was lovely. It was held. The ceremony was held at Roy Thompson Hall, and so I had to speak to everyone that was there. And if you've been to Roy Thompson Hall, it's a massive building. And I knew where it was going to be, but when I got there, I couldn't believe that it was absolutely packed from every seat on the floor, every balcony, even the side balconies, completely full. And I have to speak. And I did. And it was lovely because it really is a reminder of how important it is for other people to share in your joy. At this point in my life, I think you do things. Well, maybe I've always done things, but you do things because you want to inspire people.
Yes.
And I think that's it's a very inspiring thing when people see that the efforts that I made, like I was, for example, the longest serving, I believe, president of a provincial heritage organization in the country. And I say that because I was not paid while I was president of the Ontario Black History Society. And only crazy people do that. Um, or people that are very
Passionate.
passionate or stubborn. We can all, each word works together for some reason. But I really knew there were points that if I had walked away, I was very concerned about the future of the organization. And I felt it had a potential to do much that would help us.
Oh, this is great. And I love the fact that you're sharing your story, Rosemary, because it is inspiring. And imagine how many young girls, who would be sitting here and saying, oh my gosh, I can, because you've walked the path, right? It may not be the exact same path, but the fact that you've achieved, you're an honorary doctor, not just one, but another one that is shortly coming with University of Toronto. It's inspiring, and so I want to commend you and give you your flowers in this moment to say simply congratulations, and thank you for paving the way for so many of us leaders to be able to do great things. And I can't wait to see what is next for you. And in terms of what's next, you recently published a children's book, and I believe this is your eighth publication.
It's my eighth. I've been calling it my eighth, but that's, sometimes you write a chapter for a book and that isn't, it's writing that's published, but it isn't your whole book. So there have been some chapters and I think 8 books of my own. Yeah, it's coming out. It's called The Kids Book of Black History in Canada.
Wow.
I think, yes, it's my book, but it's completely revised and updated from a book I had written almost 20 years ago. And it has fantastic new artwork. The Black woman artist, she got the skin tones right. Skin tones, well, you know how we look. We have all kinds of skin tones, and they weren't done as well by the previous artist. So I really love what she's been able to do.
Wow, that's incredible. And I believe the book will be available at Indigo as well as Amazon and all of the major places where you can buy books. So I am looking forward to putting my order in. That's so exciting.
Thank you, thank you. Well, and it's so needed. I really it's really important. I have been on this journey because I know what I didn't have.
Yeah.
I know what my parents didn't have. I know what my kids didn't have. And it's more than just I did a book and I'm looking to rake in money. I trust me, my last book was a bestseller and I'm not rich. And so, writing a book won't make you, unless you're, really super famous and it's international. But so it isn't about the money per se. It's about getting the information out, helping to start some discussions, helping to make Black kids feel like they're seen and that they have something they can hang on to, and helping everybody else appreciate that we do have a story.
Yeah, I love that. And, I can hear the educator in you coming out. And one of the things I'm always passionate about is not just being able to share our own stories, but to be able to educate and inspire others, right? Regardless of your background, because oftentimes, stories are being told, but they're not the full story. So now the world will be able to take in the rich history that we have right here in Canada. So I'm super excited for you. Congratulations again. I can't help but wonder, you mentioned at the beginning of the call, your son, how does he feel? How do your children feel about all of the amazing accomplishments that you've achieved so far?
Um, I can't speak for them. They're adults now, but
I'm so proud.
and I feel bad for them and happy for them sometimes because I had to drag them to events. It's just the way it was sometimes. But I think they're proud of me. I think, even though everything that happens in a family, later you think, oh, I hated that, but you still get something out of it. The long trips that we took to Windsor and Collingwood, and I'm sure that there are parts of them that feel like, oh, did we have to go to one more thing, one more conference, one more historic site? But at this point, I really do think that they're proud of me. And I think that it has inspired them to also try to do what they can.
Mhm.
I would say at this point, my middle child is not the most like me, but she's certainly involved in doing speaking. My oldest one, she's gone to music, so she's an opera singer. And my son, he's still, we'll see where he ends up. But he's getting married, so I think he has a focus right now.
Okay, well, exciting journey ahead for him. So congratulations to him. I'm curious to find out, Rosemary, what is next for you? So we've talked about your amazing journey from your early days advocating. What is next? What's on your roster?
Anything. I'm looking for opportunities all the time because um, some people think that when I was at the Ontario Black History Society, I was doing what I was doing because it was my job. It wasn't my job ever. So I was doing what I was doing because I felt it was important. And after I left that organization, I continued to do that. I do diversity, equity, and inclusion work, but I'm open to opportunities and I'm open to um, whatever comes next.
Yes. Okay, I love that. Keep your options open. I want to find out about challenges. Any challenges or obstacles along the way with any of the major accomplishments, whether the small ones, the big ones, any.
I've had millions of challenges. Come on.
All
Uh,
right. Let's dive into one and share, how you've been able to overcome.
well, let me tell you about one that, I mean, not that that was the only one that's happened since October of last year, but I'll tell you about that one because I think for those people that want to believe everything is okay and that it's just about us trying to, do better. Um, I think it's just a reminder that it's many things. It's not just about us doing better, although we all need to work on ourselves and build up our skills and whatnot. But anyway, I had nominated for national historic recognition Olivier Lejeune, and he is the first person in Canada with a name. There were other enslaved Africans, but he's the first one we have a name for. And he arrived in the Montreal area, Quebec City area, about 1628. And he was 8 years old.
Wow.
Anyway, the plaque was approved. I went to Quebec City for this, I think, very exciting point in our history to mark it. I got a hotel. I'm staying in a hotel. I go for a walk because I got in sort of in the early evening, and it was a romantic dinner night, it seemed to me, and all the restaurants had just couples, and I didn't want to go into a restaurant, out in the neighborhood with just couples. So I thought, okay, I'll go back and I'll go to the restaurant that's right there in the hotel. And I stood there, and I did everything in French. I checked in French because it's Quebec City. And so the front desk people liked me because I tried. I'm from Ontario and I tried my French. So I'm waiting. There's a sign that in French saying wait to be seated. And I'm waiting. And the person walks by and walks by and walks by. Mm-hmm. And the restaurant wasn't that full. It was hardly full at all. And so finally he stops. And in English, he says, "You're still here?"
Oh.
I said, so since he spoke to me in English, I spoke to him in English. And I said, "Yes, I am. I'd like to be seated. I'd like to have something to eat." He said, "No, you cannot come in. We don't serve you."
Wow.
And so I went over and I told the people on the desk what had just happened. I couldn't believe it, like 2023. And he sees me talking to them. He comes over and in French proceeds to tell them that I was angry with him. I was rude to him. He's lying about me in front of me because he thinks I can't speak French.
Wow.
I have my first degree is a bilingual degree. So I speak French. It's just rusty. So I told them that he was lying, and the African woman on the desk, I think she was ready to kill him. But all that to say, aside from the drama, people will treat you differently because you are Black if they think that they can.
Right.
And he thought that he could, and he did, because I'm traveling, it's nighttime. Am I going to call the police because this idiot won't let me come into a restaurant? But it happens. And if I was a different kind of person, how could that situation have ended up? And I am following it up in other ways, but not a physical way.
Okay, so we'll put pen to paper, and I would love to hear the outcome after all of this. Unfortunately, Rosemary, we are out of time. I would love to extend the conversation, but this has been absolutely amazing having you on. Thank you so much for blessing us with your talent.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of the summer.